And welcome back to the Board of Selectmen meeting on November 13th. The board actually opened the regular session at 6 p.m. As we had an executive meeting. Can't tell you what happened, but we had one. So we've actually already had the roll call, and I would now ask for announcements.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned last week, the Onset Bay Association will be hosting a New Year's Eve party at Bay Point Country Club beginning at 7 p.m. Cost is $50 per person. There's limited seating. You can contact Eleanor Martin at 508-295-7072, Claire Smith at 508-295-4356, or Rudy Santos at 508-295-2374. The list of kid comfort kits for 2012 is available. This is a partnership between Sally Morrison and the MA Children's Relief and Turning Point, which serves our neediest children to ensure that there are gifts under their tree. If you are interested in participating or adopting a child, I can tell you I've been doing this for years. There's no greater joy than shopping for a child that you know won't get a Christmas otherwise. You can contact Turning Point or Sally Morrison. And that is all the announcements I have. Mrs. Begley?
This isn't really an announcement, but I just wanted to publicly thank Bob White and Sharon Boyer for an absolutely extraordinary day for the Veterans Day, and the countless volunteers that made it happen. And they went above and beyond the call of duty, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful honor to participate.
Mr. Teitelbaum?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Slavin?
Thank you. Wareham Historical Society at the 495 Main Street Old Methodist Meeting House, Monday, 19th of November, 7 p.m. Tim Weisberg will present his lecture entitled Ghost, Legit or Legend. Tim will explore some of the theories of what ghosts may be and why we feel the need to believe in the afterlife. This, again, will be for members of the society. Is free. For those who are not members, $2, and I can speak for the society. We need more members, especially someone under 70.
Mr. Holmes?
I haven't finished yet. Sorry.
Oh.
Well, I got a bunch.
Speed it up. 50. We started 15 minutes late.
No, I'm speeding it up there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Wareham Village Association will be doing, it looks like, their parade for Christmas on Merchants Way around Main Street down to Tremont Nail rather than the Town Hall, and that will be on December 8th. They are going to plan as of right now on December 7th at 5 p.m. to, looks like they're going to go ahead and do the tree lighting as well. And that's that one. We have one from last week to repeat, the Toast for the Teachers, Tuesday, November 27th, 6 to 9 p.m. at Piper's. This is to help support teachers. And I believe we have the Village Association also, I think, still has a few tickets left for the Frosty train ride. You would have to get a hold of the Village Association. There's still some tickets available for certain times on Saturday and Sunday. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, I just want to announce that next week, on November the 20th, there will be no Board of Selectmen meeting for the Thanksgiving week in our next meeting. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on the 27th of November.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we do have a 7:15 hearing for the FY13 residential factor. I'd like to skip to item number 7 at this time and move to open the hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Motion
Motion
Second.
made and second. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is now open. Come forward. Good evening, Mrs. Miller, Mr. Curry.
Good evening, and with all those announcements, I wished I lived a lot closer.
Well,
Move on down.
Well, I'm here to present your yearly decision on whether to split the rate. You've got some information in your packet there. Tonight, you will vote on whether to adopt a single rate or a split rate. To adopt actually, the split rate is to the commercial, residential and commercial. You have to make a motion tonight, which will be reported to the Department of Revenue on the gateway system, requiring signatures of the selectmen and also of the clerk as a witness to be part of the tax setting process. You will be voting either for a
And
single or
Madam Clerk,
unified
Madam
rate of
Clerk
one.
is here.
Oh, okay, good. Or a multiple rate or split rate, and your spread is between anywhere between 110 to 150 that you can shift. Let's just make sure we all know what the residential class right now is at 82% of your total value. 82% of it is residential. Residential includes single family, residential condo, and residential land. The CIP refers to commercial, industrial, and personal property. 18% of this year's preliminary numbers go to the CIP, broken down commercial, which should be your stores, your businesses, make up 12% of that 18. Industrial, which would be factory or production, 2.09, and personal property, which also includes the second home furniture, is 3.58% of the total. So it would be a split or a shift of taxes, tax dollars, between residential and commercial and industrial and personal property. On the next page, I thought it would be easiest to give you an example of the current rate, since we don't have a rate for this year yet. But the concept would follow through no matter what your rate is. It's the same concept every year. So the current single rate, which you voted last year, was $9.37. As I've calculated this year, the average single-family assessment is $230,000. And this one kind of surprised me because it's a very long range. The average commercial assessment, which was only classes 300 and 400, commercial and industrial, was $615. I didn't include personal property in that number because it would have skewed it too far down. It's very small dollar amounts. So the average single-family tax bill is $21.55 with an average commercial industrial bill of $57.63. Should you decide to split the rate and shift it 105 or 5% over to the commercial and away from the residential rate would go to $8.90, and the commercial rate would go to $9.84. So your average single-family bill would be $2,047, a reduction of $108, or a residential savings of $108, and your CIP, commercial and industrial, would go up by $289, or a bill of $6,052. Then I took it to the middle split, which would be 125, and your rate on residential would drop to $538. Commercial would go up to $1171, and your single family tax bill would be $1617. So the residential property would save $538, and the commercial increase would be $1437, or a bill of $7200. Are there any questions on that particular page? I mean, we can do a lot of math here, but this gives you two ends and the where we are now. So you can take a look at what a burden it would shift over. In summary, in my experience, well, it's a fact, the split rate does not increase revenue. That's a really important thing to keep in mind as you look at this potential for what you can do or can't do. If you decide to split the rate, it would raise the average commercial tax bill to a level that would make Wareham unattractive to businesses or not as competitive as some of our neighbors. Many of the town's commercial properties are leased, and when they're leased, this gets passed off to your neighbor and my neighbor who may be renting that property to run their small business. So it becomes a burden to the small business, I called them owners in here, tenants. Wareham has a large summer community, and the out-of-town owners would be burdened with more personal property tax on their furnishings and so forth. also making Wareham less desirable, and you are a summer community and want to maintain that. It's been some of our largest sales have been to summer residents. Currently, out of the 352 towns in Massachusetts, 31% of them have a split rate. When considering this, you need to also consider the administrative costs and the time to implement and switching the billing system to accommodate the split rate. And then below are your historical tax rates for the town. And we don't have very much into the gateway system, the recap so far. I do have 2 of the forms in, but John Foster and I kind of played around a little bit, and we're maybe just under $10 for a rate this year. But that is a big estimate. We have a lot of work yet to do to come to that. So at this point, it would be for your discussion or questions on whether you would consider splitting the rate or leaving it as a factor of 1.
Thank you. Mr. Curry, anything to add?
No, I believe Elsa's pretty much explained the basics.
Is anybody here like to voice their opinion? Sir? Oh, you're scratching. I'm sorry. I saw you go like that. I thought you wanted to. Anyone? Hearing nothing. Mr. Titlebaum.
As somebody who pays a residential real estate tax bill once a quarter, as attractive as it might seem to try to shift some of that burden off to our commercial interests, we're in the business now of trying to attract business here. I don't see that there's any particular point in doing that. We've just managed to get a TIF through this board and then subsequently through town meeting. I don't want to send any mixed messages here, so my recommendation and vote will be to stay with the single tax classification rate.
Mr. Slavin?
We have to basically vote on this. We have a time frame on this as well.
The time frame, typically, the vote has to be done at a meeting.
Yeah.
How long do you have to consider it?
Yeah.
I would say probably another couple of weeks.
In the future, it would be appreciated if we have this information or we can discuss this a little more, because we're basically being asked within a short period of time again to make a decision on something that we have no input at all, as far as we haven't had any time to discuss it as a group.
Oh.
And just doing it at the hearing here really doesn't do much. That's my one point. The other point I have, sitting here, if we were to vote to split it and decrease the rate to the residential, everybody of us here sitting owns property in Wareham. If we go ahead and vote to switch it around, we have a financial interest, and I'm wondering whether or not.
Oh, it's never been mentioned before.
So I'm just wondering whether or not we actually split it and have a change like that, whether or not there's a conflict of interest as well.
Well, it's been done for years by boards of selectmen, so I would have to ask that to the Department of Revenue.
I understand that, but
Mr. Chairman, to his concern here, the same thing happens when setting sewer rates and everything else. So I think we would actually be in good stead, because we wouldn't be doing it just to benefit the 5 of us. We would be doing it to benefit how many residential tax bills go out in this town?
On the residential end, there's 15,000 parcels, so there's probably 12,000 residential.
Yeah, so we'd just be 5 out of 12,000. So I don't think anybody could point and say they're really feather betting just their own interests here.
Yeah.
I'm bringing the point up because it's.
No one's ever brought that point up before, Mr. Slavin, so I'm at a loss.
If you read the ethics laws, it falls into this area a little bit. So that was my one point. My main point is really that we need to have more time to spend on this, so we can really make a good decision, because we're basically making a decision saying it's unattractive to business, it's not good for the residents, so we're going to leave it the way it is. But we really have to look long-term what's going to work for us, and we need time to do it. So in the future, I'd appreciate if we had more time.
How much time do you have?
Hold it.
Trying to put it off?
No, I'm not going to put it.
meeting next week. That's why we try to get it in this week.
My point, Mrs. Begley, is you're asking someone to make a decision. What's going to work best? Yes. Okay, I apologize. But like I say, a lot of times what happens is things come before this board, and they come late, and we have to make a decision like now or a week later, and it's not enough time. This affects everybody long term. So in the future, I'd like to see some time frames that work for all of us, that's all.
Just to answer that, Mr. Slavin, this hearing is usually scheduled once a year about this time. We're not requesting that you vote on that this evening, we're required by law to present this, and the selectmen do have to vote on a residential factor of 1 or a split rate. We're providing that information. We're not asking you to say you have to vote on this tonight. This is presented if it's the decision of the board on this vote. So if you yourselves or other members wish to discuss it or wait till another time, that's perfectly fine with us.
My understanding was, we just said we had to have an answer done in like 2 weeks. That's was my concern.
I'll probably have more than that. I mean, what time frame were you thinking you wanted, and what information can I get for you?
Time frame, probably, I would say at least a month would be nice if it's possible. And as far as the information, looking at the growth patterns of what we have for residential versus, industrial, et cetera, and
Growth
commercial.
patterns?
Yeah, to have some idea what we're doing. Give us a chance to analyze where the town is going, because we really don't know what the growth pattern is.
Well, the purpose of this is a public hearing, so we can put the vote off. She can get the information out. We can put the vote off if the board wants to do that. Till the end of the month, or our first meeting in December, and then you'll have a month to read it.
Okay.
Well,
we can do
all the
that, right?
information is gonna be pulled out of the Gateway, which you have access to, Gateway? Well,
No,
you
they-
needed to sign these. They don't have it? To read
No.
it? Anyone should have it. I'll be glad to put some stuff together. No, all you have to sign in there. Sign the LA7 and the
The
LA5.
one thing that I would suggest on here is I understand the timing. This might be for next fiscal year,
fiscal year.
would be the timing
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And if we're going to realistically think about splitting the tax rate, we're probably talking about having that conversation today for next year at this time.
I agree.
So,
Thank you.
Mrs. Begley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple questions. What's the current personal property tax rate, the percentage? It's
Their
fairly low,
percentage
isn't
or
it?
their rate?
Oh, the rate. It's fairly low,
It's the
isn't it?
same as the town's rate.
All right, and that's just for personal property tax, that's for summer or
Second
part-time residents?
homes, furniture.
Right. And how close are you to setting the actual rate?
Mr. Sullivan?
for the actual rate from what we need from them, I believe you've already got what the LA3.
The LA3 is in, which is the sales report, and the LA5, which is the interim year adjustments. And I'm currently entering the LA13, which is the growth report.
So then what happens is once those are entered in, the Department of Revenue reviews those and would give them back to us in roughly, 2 weeks is,
Depends on where we go in the queue.
right, so it'd be roughly, so the thing is to get this information in there as soon as possible, because again, we're waiting in line for other communities that are putting their things in, so any delay on it probably right now is not a good thing, to be blunt.
And what's the deadline
Realistically,
to have this to the DOR?
realistically, we would want this information from the assessing side in there within the next 2 weeks, I would say. So you figure November 26th on there, having it submitted, because then figure 2 weeks, but it could be 3 weeks to get it back. So the true deadline is December 31st, but we need to be all set up before that.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so.
And so the procedure for setting the actual rate is having all of these documents into the DOR by a certain time. So when will I know that we're only voting on whether to have a single tax rate or a split tax rate, but when will the actual number be available to this board and to the public?
So once from the assessing side, once all the numbers are put together
Well, yeah, all
on
the
there.
accounting numbers have to come
Right,
in.
so-
The management letter has to be done.
So when the DOR sets that, we would probably be looking at, the plan is to have it at least 2 weeks before the end of December, and anything before that is great
Okay.
as well.
We're ahead of last year.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
And did the Board of Assessors have a vote on or a recommendation?
That was discussed with the board, but the board felt that by giving a recommendation, it'd be more of, I hate to say, a political influence. The vote of residential factor is strictly on the Board of Selectmen. They're the ones that make that decision and the authority. We know that historically it's been the town's history to have the residential factor of one rate.
All right, just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Small business and medium-sized business are facing a lot of challenges over the next few months as we approach the dreaded fiscal cliff, the expiration of the Bush-era tax cuts, the implementation of Obamacare, which begins next year. I watched the other day as the tenants across from us loaded up about 12 18-wheelers and moved out and left their building. So I would not be in favor of a split tax rate at this point in time. I do think that at some point in the future, a small split would be a good idea because our citizens are taking on, their tax rate keeps going up and they're getting less and less for it. But I think that for us to remain competitive and to ensure that our businesses can survive the challenges of the upcoming year, we need to keep the status quo.
Thank you. Before we close the hearing, is there any commentary now from the public? Going once, going twice?
Motion to close the hearing?
I have a motion to close the hearing. In a second.
Second.
Second, anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. Close
Mr.
the
Chairman.
hearing. I want to thank you both for your time and energy coming in and giving us that presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
and
much.
Have a great evening. If I don't see you, have a great Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve a residential tax factor for FY13 of 1.
Second.
I have a motion made and second to set the tax at 1. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? 5-0-0. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, going back up to item number 4, citizens' participation.
Marianne,
Does she have to?
do we just have to go to your office to sign?
Do you have
No.
you don't have the envelope of the?
No.
We don't
text.
have it.
All I have is a copy of the public hearing. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see you all here today.
Nice to see you as well.
Go ahead. I'm Barbara Gomes Beach. This is my colleague, Sharon Gomes.
Sharon Gomes. Hi, everyone. We want to come up and thank everyone for their vote on Article 32. The Oakdale Cremisa Betterment wants to thank everyone that voted. We appreciate it for something that was well-deserved and that was done fairly. It feels good to sit over here and say thank you for everything because it was worked on for a very long time, and we really appreciate that. And that's all we ask for is the fairness. So our appreciation to everyone, and to let everybody know that their vote is so important. And if we want things done in the town, you need to come out and vote. And if you feel that it does affect you, you need to be here and vote for the things that are upcoming in the town, and hope those things never happen again. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
I'd like to add that it is our intention, in addition to thanking not only the members who voted for, but the ones who have apprehensions about Article 32, was it? I always get the numbers mixed up. Article 32, that it is also our intention to work as closely as possible with the selectmen and other interested individuals to try and identify funds to help bridge the gap between what whatever our betterment is going to be and any gap that might exist. We'd like to pledge that to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
I thought you were going to ask me a question.
Anyone else? We have a couple of licenses here.
Yeah, I don't believe there's anything on the Westfield discussion, Mr. Chair. Under consent agenda, we have no authorization to sign bills. We do have the approval of the August 27th, 2012 executive session minutes, which I will move to approve and hold as written.
Um,
Hang on.
is it necessary to hold them?
I don't have an opinion from council on that matter. It's my understanding that town council will advise us
Okay.
that he has all the executive session meeting minutes and in fact had them last
Okay.
week. But so I don't personally think they need to be held, but
What do we know?
yeah.
And we also have an invoice here, Mrs. Winslow.
I think there's something wrong here. I had a question when I looked at this the first
It doesn't look like executive to me. I
No,
think
we
it was just,
appointed a member
I
of the-
bel-
of the
I believe,
cemetery? That's
I
not
believe it was a
executive
special
session.
meeting. I don't believe, it was a special meeting because we needed to vote in a timely fashion, but I don't believe it was executive, Mr. Holmes.
This was done in public.
Okay, then I'll withdraw my motion. And if whoever seconded will withdraw their second, then we'll ask the office to correct them and resubmit them.
Yeah, we did this on TV.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe that's true.
I was wondering about it myself, but
So we'll have to correct it, just Board
Well,
of,
it doesn't say executive anywhere except in that, on the top.
right.
right. Well, they need to they need to fix that. So
Yeah, I know, you can prove it taking the word executive out.
I know I need the other person to withdraw their second. Oh.
Withdrawn.
I move to approve the special meeting minutes of August 27th with the change of the word executive to the word special.
Second.
Have a motion made and seconded. Question? All in favor? All opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
That gives us,
302.
302.
both weren't there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have a seasonal liquor license extension request for Bay Point Country Club from 19 Bay Point Drive in Onset. Is anybody here to represent? Mr. Chairman, I have a question on this. I thought we had this conversation quite a while back. I believe it was our first year on the board. And we were told at the time that these types of requests weren't permitted, so I was confused.
I was actually surprised to see this because it's not even needed. They can actually have events there year round. They're a country club. And last year, the state law changed last year. Seasonal liquor licenses at golf course, they were limited to, I think it was 35. And the state changed that law last year. They can be open every day as long as they ask for permission on a golf course. That changed last year, so I was kind of surprised to see this. I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to anybody there about it.
I think we need town council to look at it before we can act on it, though. That's my only concern. We do have plenty of time. The license
Yeah.
doesn't.
But that's what,
Well,
that came up last year.
Mr. Chair, did we amend their license? Or, I mean, what their license states is it's a seasonal license
Right.
from date certain to date certain. So that's all they have hanging on the wall right now. So I would like to hear what town council has to say about it
Yeah,
before
I
we
didn't see
act on
anything
something
back
like
from
this.
Rich on this. Again, I don't even they don't even really, according to the new state law that was changed last year, they don't even need an extension. It's unlimited.
Well, in any event, I'd prefer not to act on it tonight until we get some type of clarification as to whether we need to act on it.
I'll send it to Rich if the
Okay.
board is okay with that.
Up next, we have number 9, SOAR business discussion with CDM
I
regarding.
actually have
Oh,
an emergency, one day.
For,
And the reason I accepted it was because we don't meet next week. For this, you get this?
yeah, it's in our packet.
Yeah, I asked them to make sure that in,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jeffrey, how are you?
Good, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
thank you.
give me heart attacks on this last minute stuff, brother. Yeah.
Well, I certainly apologize for that. The site contacted, I'm sorry, I should begin. My name is Anthony Jeffrey, and I'm with Professional Bartending Service. The application before the board tonight is for a one-day beer and wine permit for an event to be held on November 23rd at the new Buzzards Bay Playhouse on Cranberry Highway. And to get back to the point that I started to make, the owner of the Playhouse and myself did have discussions on this a little while back, and there was a little bit of miscommunication, but we did finally connect such that we close. We decided that the 23rd was the date, and I, in my discussions with the owner, I mentioned to her that I would do everything I could to get before the board to get this permit approved. And the girls in the office were nice enough to help me put this together for tonight's hearing, so I certainly thank the girls in the office for doing that, and as I thank the board for hearing me tonight. To go through the particulars again.
Usually you're better than this.
I am
Usually,
much better than this,
very
usually much
timely
more
when it comes to
timely,
these.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I certainly apologize for my misstep on that. But to go through the particulars of this event, the date again is November 23rd. It is a theater production event to be held at the Playhouse on Cranberry Highway. The hours for this event are scheduled to be 7 to 11:30 p.m., and the anticipated guest count is 75 to a maximum of 100 people. And again, it is a beer and wine application only. No hard liquor will be available at this event.
Do you know what the production is?
You know, I don't. I have to apologize for that. I don't
It's too
know.
bad she couldn't have come. She could have had all this free
Could have given
advertising.
it a pitch.
Yes, yeah, good point. Good. I think they've got it advertised online or on the town website, possibly, for anybody that might be interested in doing a little bit of digging on that. But no, I don't know the actual production to be held that night. So that would be the summary of the application for the 23rd, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the application by Professional Bartending Service for a one-day liquor permit, beer and wine, for November 23rd, 2012, for an event from 7 to 11:30 p.m. at theater production at Buzzards Bay Playhouse.
Second.
Motion made and second. Anything else on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 5-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
Have a
members of the
great,
board.
have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You as well.
All right.
Okay, we now have a discussion with CDM regarding the update on the closeout of the Contract 2 SOAR project.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Mr. Campino is here. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good
Thank you
evening.
for coming.
Good evening.
For the
We were
record, Mike,
supposed to do this a couple of weeks ago when the storm hit, so
had a
I'm glad
few
we were able to do it this evening.
had a few false starts along the way. For the record, Mike Judici from CDM Smith. As you indicated, just wanted to give an update on where we stand with Contract 2. Obviously, this closeout has stretched out longer than we would have hoped at this point, and we're doing what we can to come to a swift conclusion. So for the last several weeks, or actually a couple of months, we've been working with Guy to sort of investigate, and I'm sure he's reported to you, there've been some flow in the chromesit portion of the Contract 2 system. An obvious culprit had been identified early on, that the hatch for the Mattapoisett pumping station in the middle of the road tends to collect water that gets in through the hatch between the leaves. In addition to that, we just wanted to make sure that there wasn't something else going on, because it was really just during intermittent periods during certain rainstorms where we would see this flow getting into both the pumping stations. It wasn't something that was happening all the time. During dry weather, there would be no flow in the system, which is obviously a good thing. And then during certain rain events, not all rain events, there would be some flow in the system. So we've been out several times with Guy, both during and after, shortly after rainstorms, including the day after Hurricane Sandy. Obviously, a lot of rain at that point, just to see what was going on in the system. So we'd put manholes around the system and basically come to the conclusion that there is no infiltration coming in the pipes, that it appears that the source is, in fact, the hatch at the Mattapoisett station. So we're comfortable, and I believe Mr. Campina is comfortable that the pipes and the system itself is tight. So in order to address that hatch at Mattapoisett, the contractor has agreed to come out on the 26th, that's 2 weeks from yesterday, on Monday, to address and regrade the area just upstream of the Mattapoisett hatch. What's happening now is the water is flowing down the street. Typically, when they pave the road, they'll create a crown in the road, a high point, so the water would shed off into the gutters. And that is the case for the majority of Mattapoisett until it gets about 20 or 30 feet upstream of the hatch, and then the crown sort of disappears, and the water makes its way to the middle of the road where the hatch is. So they're going to go out and correct that, redirect the water to the gutter so it passes past the hatch. At the same time, there's also an issue that was brought up a month or so ago regarding a couple of catch basins at the bottom of Mattapoisett down near Cedar Island Road. So at the same time that they're out addressing the hatch, they're going to address the drainage issue at those catch basins as well to make sure the water that's coming down the street gets to the basins. As it is right now, just the way the road was graded, the water on either side of the road doesn't make it to the catch basins. So it just needs to be regraded and addressed. And that's their intent at this point. So we'll have someone out there on the 26th overseeing the work. I believe Mr. Campino will be out there or have one of his staff as well. The contractor has submitted his final pay estimate a couple weeks ago. We are holding on to that and have not submitted that until this work that I just described gets taken care of and this issue is resolved.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
we're not paying for him to correct this, are we?
No, ma'am.
Is this the location that the gentleman was in the other night? Guy that we were talking about?
That's correct. And the two particular
Same
basins,
issue, right? The same
yes.
location.
And this will wrap it up. These basins were addressed by the contractor. The other two basins that they mentioned, the basins work fine. The lines between the basin and when they discharge to the ocean are clogged, and municipal maintenance will take care of those issues.
Anything on that issue? Ella? Okay. Next.
The issues with the change orders have been resolved. I think there was a question of the Oak Street, Oak Terrace Road. That's been resolved, so there will be no bill for that. So they've agreed not to bill. So all the outstanding, the same thing with the pump station. The Narrows pump station, we had the surge tank. We had, they came back and did some electrical work, tied it into the generator. There was approximately $12,000. That went away. So all the change orders no longer exist. So my hat's off to the contractor for cooperating with us. So there's no more change orders.
Yeah, it should have I'm sorry.
Oh, so go ahead, Mr. Judici.
I was just going to say, I indicated that he submitted the final pay rec, and it did not include any change orders. It's just looking for release of his remaining retainage. You're still holding 2.5% of his contract. It's roughly $123,000 at this point.
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Guy,
Yes.
so all of the issues that you had have been resolved or in the process of being resolved. Does that include the SIM card?
Yes. The SIM card is done. They gave us a new SIM card. They also sent us a brand new stick, which is a backup level indicator for that station. We have that in case we need it. So all the issues have been resolved with the SIM card and the stick, which was a level indicator at the pump stations at Linwood and the pump station at Parkwood. So they're all rectified. Yes.
So there is no outstanding issues whatsoever other than the road regrading at Cremisa?
That is correct. The last we're doing is the I&I issue, which is the inflow, and that's the road, and that should be taken care of the 26th. And once that's taken care of, all the outstanding issues that we've been dealing with for the past 7 or 8 months are resolved slowly, and but surely. We got each and every individual specific issue that's been a problem. Yes.
Thank you.
Forgive me, Mr. Judici, I'm under the weather tonight.
Absolutely.
When can we expect a final tally and a final count of property? As you know, there was an article passed at town meeting where the betterments are capped. So it's imperative that this board understand what the difference is between what the betterment can be and what the actual betterment is, because as you'll see further on the agenda, we need to talk about how to fund that difference. And that's going to be very important, especially going forward, because if we set the betterment before the end of the year, then that betterment will start being paid in January 1st, 2014, correct? And so we don't have a lot of time, especially if we're going to seek assistance from the state or the federal government to make up that difference. We need to.
We have the final costs. I mean, as I said, they submitted their final pay requisition. So, I'm sorry. It's just for the release of their final retainage. It's like $123,000.
Yeah, but do we have a betterment number? Or what would have been a betterment number, I should say.
We have all the other components.
We have
That's
all
the
the
construction
components.
cost and then the other
$21,341 approximately, and we can get you a hard number. I talked to Mr. Deshays today, the attorney working with this, and he will pick up the betterment plan from the engineers tomorrow. We'll meet, go over the betterment plan, match it up to every tie card and every property that's going to be assessed a betterment. We'll tally up those numbers, and then we'll finalize the cost of the actual cost of the construction we have with the actual betterment certified by Mr. Deshays, and then we'll do the factor and tell you the exact number. So I hope to have that done in the next couple of days, as soon as Mr. Deshays gets his part done with getting the plans from the engineers, and him and I sitting down and one by one proving these out.
And Mr. Campina, did we ever get copies of all those attorney bills? Because I believe I pointed out previously that while you have a good number of dollars assigned to attorney's bills, this board never approved them.
I understand. I turned in the bills I had from Mr. Deshays, and the thing that I found at that time is, even though this board specifically didn't approve every single bill, they went through the town administrator, who authorized every single transaction with Mr. Deshays, the attorney, going back to the beginning of contract 2. And so I don't know who authorized that. I can't speak to that. Not my place, but according to Mr. Deshays, he's got authorization from the town administrator. Every time you submitted a bill, it was through the town administrator's office, and they were authorized to be paid.
Well, just to point out, this board is the SOAR commissioners, and the town administrator does not have the authorization.
I didn't give it to the town administrator. I wasn't involved.
Neither did we.
I'm just informing you of the facts that I found out. I have nothing to do with it.
Just letting you know, if there's more bills from Attorney Deshay, they need to come.
It's not your fault.
No, I'm not
They
saying.
need to come
I'm trying
to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree.
This stack of bills in our packet.
That we just got today.
From CDM, yeah, Mike can speak to these. These were bills from past. You see the dates on them. They've been paid. Actually, the money's been appropriated for them through the SRF funding, but they haven't actually received payment. You can speak to Mike. He can speak to it better than I.
Yeah, I'm not sure they had made it into your package or not, but
You know what they are, right?
absolutely. They're just the final invoices. There's one in there for contract 1, and these date back to, I believe they were all submitted back in May, and for whatever reason, they never made their way to this board. And
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, did you check with the interim town administrator? Because some of these bills, I do believe, we either voted on or we had questions or problems with. Has there been any communication as to, because I just had an issue a couple weeks ago I asked him about, and a check had been cut on that issue and that person hadn't received it. So can we check on these, please?
I checked with Mark Gifford and Debbie, who were in charge of these bills. Mark signed off on them, and they had not been paid, according to Mr. Gifford and and Debbie.
These may have been the ones that we got that he
America.
hadn't signed off on, which may have been why we didn't approve them.
They could be. But Mark had proved them out that they have not been paid. I checked with Mark Gifford when I first got my first set of these, and I asked him to investigate these. He did. He talked to Debbie, and these specific bills had not been paid.
Are some of these bills dated to 2007?
No.
I have
don't
a-
believe so.
Contract
I
one,
have
does it?
something here that says December 2007 on it.
I'm not sure what you have, Mrs. Bagley. I have,
I have one here that says professional engineering services in accordance with the agreement dated August 15th and amendment dated to 2007. So these are services from December 25th, 2011 through January 21st, 2012.
correct. The 2000
these-
reference was to the contract.
Okay,
original
so
contract.
these are nearly a year old, some of these invoices.
Correct. I think the last one was through April of this year.
So have all of these bills been factored into what you have for?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
They were carried in they're within
Yes.
our contract value, yes. But if there's some question over whether they may or may, we can certainly work with Mr. Sullivan and check to make sure if there's any question.
Well, the board, or at least me, didn't get these until today, so I would at least appreciate the opportunity to look them over and maybe put them
Certainly.
on the next agenda.
Certainly.
Okay, next.
Not to discuss any of the bills per se, but just procedure. I'm just asking a question. Don't take offense.
No, it's all
Okay.
fine.
Is it unusual, or is it something that doesn't happen where a town, when they're doing these kind of projects, has their own internal engineer to assist with looking at the bills, analyzing what's going on? Because I spent time looking at the bills going back a ways, and I'm fairly good at that. But for me to sit there and actually okay and not okay bills, looking at the way they come through, I couldn't come up with an answer one way or the other. And I'm just wondering whether in the future, whether the town should be looking at having some, like an internal engineer, looking at stuff to help us along. Because there's certain issues come up, and it just, I think, slides by.
Well, I believe as Mr. Campina indicated, we submit the bills to Mr. Gifford and they get checked and sent on up to town hall at that point. So what level of checking goes on, I can't speak to.
Is it unusual for, say, when you deal with other towns or cities, to have an internal engineer on the town side working as well?
Not every town has a town engineer, but typically there's a point of contact, as I said, as Mr. Gifford has been for this project, that the bills would be submitted to, and then again, to what level they look at the bills and study them, I can't speak to. But again, not every town has a town engineer, certainly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, just going back to what we were discussing right before we got into the meat of these individual bills, and this is directed more to Mr. Campina. If you've got everything in place here, it sounds to me like we're looking to get this final number as soon as possible, and it sounds like you can produce it fairly quickly. Would you be able to come back before us on the 27th with the final cost per unit figure? I'm not going to call it a betterment figure because that's something we're going to do that's a little bit different than the cost per unit figure. But are you going to be able to, would you be able to provide us that with utter certainty on November 27th?
As certain as I can be, 27th is fine. I'll be meeting with Mr. Shays, and he'll assist me in that certainty. At that also, at the 27th, we'll have the disposition of 26 of the contractors, so we can report on that also. Because I think at that time, we need to talk about setting the betterment and interest rate. I've talked to John Foster about getting this all wrapped up by December 31st, if that be the wish of the board. So we'll try to get everything in place. By the 27th should be plenty of time to get everything wrapped up. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to.
Thank you. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but where you kind of put yourself out there by saying I can do it in a couple of days. I figured, well, a couple of days, couple of weeks, I'm giving you enough time.
It's not a bad place to be sometimes, so no, that's fine.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I just have a question. I had to go under any other sewer business before Mr. Judici leaves.
Sure.
I just wanted to know if any money's been expended for contract 3, and if so, how much?
Not that hadn't previously been expended to bid the project, not since that point, no.
So do you happen to know how much that was to bid the project for contract 3?
Well, we designed and bid. Are you talking the total expenditures? I don't know off the top of my head, but I can certainly get you that.
That would be great
that
to have
figure.
that on the 27th as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr.
Thank you.
Campino?
No, I think we're all set. Thank you.
All right, so I believe that takes care of any other
Thank you guys very much. Thanks, Mike.
Any other sewer business? Moving on to item number 10, town business, special legislation for sewer commissioners. This one was mine.
This is yours.
Mr. Chair, I asked for the following 3 items to appear on the agenda until such time as we had reached resolution. We may not have anything to discuss on them, but I felt that if they were on the agenda on a regular basis, then as things came up, we could address them. As we're all aware, and Attorney Bowen is not here tonight, so I'm not sure we're going to get very far with this one particular item. The special legislation that had been submitted at town meeting varied significantly from the original article that had been approved. And the emails that I had received regarding the issues with presenting it to the legislature indicated that there was simply the change of one line that was necessary. That was all Senator Pacheco's office was looking for. And that line had to do with notwithstanding any other law that may be in effect. However, the warrant article that was presented contained language which elected 5 SOAR commissioners, 3 of whom are required to be SOAR users, and had the SOAR director report directly to them, thereby eliminating the town administrator, who is the supervisor of all town employees, except the school district, which is governed under Mass General Law, separate as school ed reform. So I had hoped that Attorney Bowen was going to be here tonight so that he could explain to us the benefit of designing the special legislation in that way, and why, if it was more beneficial for us to have that kind of setup, why it hadn't been proposed. But he's not here tonight, so.
Didn't know you wanted him here. You didn't ask.
Oh, I thought he was just going to come to the.
He doesn't come to every meeting.
Oh.
Usually ask him.
Town meeting Situate. Town meeting Situate.
Oh, well, in any event, I mean, I'm hoping that you'll keep this item on the agenda, and we have to address it.
Yeah, but why?
Why? Because we need to resubmit a new article.
No, the vote at town meeting was for the study.
That,
I asked who was going to study it, remember? And people laughed.
well, I didn't laugh.
No, people laughed. There's no, are you saying, excuse me, I'm asking her a question. Are you saying that you want the Board of Selectmen to be the studiers and to create a new article? Is that what you're asking us?
I'm saying that the Board of Selectmen should submit a new article. We were the ones that submitted that article.
I think that came out of the Charter Review Committee, did it not?
Originally, it came out of the Charter Review Committee, but this time around,
Never drew that up, that I remember.
well, the Board of Selectmen drew up the changes. Somebody wasn't the Charter Review Committee. They haven't met in years.
I'm saying, so you're asking us to write an article for town meeting, that's what you're asking for?
I'm saying that we should be the ones that resubmit the article. It's clear that the town wants SOAR commissioners. Whether I personally agree with that or not is irrelevant. And there was significant change between the charter review article and the one that was presented at town meeting. I think we have a duty to the citizens of the community.
So we should just resubmit the original article in April? Is that what you're
Well, no, there was a problem with that. That's what Senator Pacheco's office said. He needed some line, a line in there that wasn't there. Maybe Mr. Slavin can help us.
There was a lot more involved than just the single line. That's why things were corrected. There were certain issues which were confusing. We didn't get a final AG approval of any kind or any information as far as it went, because it never got off Senator Pacheco's desk. So that was strictly sitting there with an attorney looking at some language, just having a question. It actually is more involved than that. What I would suggest, since there was information at town meeting, which I'm not going to get into, there is questions about what was said at town meeting. I think the first thing to do is find out first that the article that was submitted, whether or not it follows under actually setting up a district, which was mentioned, and other things. And I think first we need to find out what was originally submitted by myself to the board actually is correct or not, as far as what it does, it doesn't do, and then we can go from there and modify it. When I put it together, it was put together in such a way that it could be taken apart and switched around with no problem. But it got switched around, and actually some of the things switched with some of the issues that they had at the AG's office, because our municipal maintenance director reporting and stuff is not qualified to run a sewer plant. That was one of the issues they had, among others, which was put back in. So to make life simple, I would suggest you wait till Rich is back here. He can have some explanation. I'll provide some, and we can go from there.
So the agenda item, to be clear, is the Board of Selectmen will submit this portion of our agenda each week will be to discuss the submission of an article in April.
When there's information to be discussed on it, correct?
Well, if there's nothing there, you can just say, move on.
Right.
Not a problem.
Okay.
But it's not to talk about special ed, it's to actually create and submit an article for April town meeting.
Right.
You have to be clear on that, otherwise we run afoul. Anything else? You're up next.
Next one, the town administrator position. As we all know, we posted for a town administrator position. There was a search committee, screening committee, that screened through, I believe it was 28 applicants. A couple did withdraw. They came up with a list of 3, which were interviewed by this board, and subsequently none were hired. Since then, we have put Mr. Sullivan in an interim position with a stipend, and I believe that the board should make a decision about what we're going to do with the position. And I actually have a suggestion. My concern is that it's not fair to the citizens of the community or to Mr. Sullivan as we head into the budget process for everything to be in limbo. Currently, we're expecting Mr. Sullivan to not only perform the duties of his prior job, which was the financial analyst, but to also perform the duties of the town administrator, which is a demanding position to have. In addition to that, because of his interim status, he does not have the security of a contract with this board. So he basically performs at the whim of this board, and that puts him in a pretty tough position. And he's going to have some tough, should he stay in the interim position, there are going to be some tough decisions that need to be made. And this board either needs to support him and back him, or we need to replace him as the interim. So my suggestion would be that we consider an arrangement where Mr. Sullivan, should he desire, could be appointed as the town administrator with a 1-year contract. However, we will appoint him at a salary that will allow for us to hire a consultant to help him move through some of the more difficult issues that come up in the budgeting process, as well as some of the other... Are you laughing?
Me?
Yeah.
No, we're on the same page, so keep going.
as well as the other issues, such as some of the collective bargaining issues that may come up. So it would be my thought, and I don't really know how the rest of the board feels about it, but, and I say this, and I just...
Can you walk back through that again?
Yes. My thought is that we offer Mr. Sullivan the position, the town administrator position,
I don't think we can do that.
with a 1-year contract. We would pay, we currently have, what is it, $110,000 budgeted in that line item?
106.
We would,
Give or take.
109 and change. So we would need to take a portion of that, those dollars, excuse me, what?
I believe we also have Mr. Sullivan's salary as financial analyst in the budget as well.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Hold on.
I'm trying to write down what you're...
Okay. We would offer the job to Mr. Sullivan with a 1-year contract. Mr. Sullivan would have a budget to bring in a consultant. We'll give him that dollar amount because he's going to need assistance. We will not fill the financial analyst position at this time because we do need to conserve our dollars right now until we get through the budget season. So my proposal, well, I'm not sure if we can discuss the dollars in public, so, but that would be my proposal. Because I do believe, and I've gotten some emails from people, and they do bring up very valid points about the fact that Mr. Sullivan does not have a lot of years of experience under his belt, but I think he's a bright individual, and I think that if we provide him with the expertise of somebody who is seasoned and working as a consultant to work through the difficult areas, I think that he could fare very well. And certainly, should he fare well, then we have the option of extending his contract. And should he not fare well, a 1-year contract is no different than a 3-year contract with a 1-year probationary period. He would be better served to renegotiate his contract a year from now than he would be to be on a 1-year probationary period.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Would this motion take Mr. Sullivan out of the bargaining unit?
Yes, ma'am, it would.
When you say that...
Mr. Sullivan.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. You're talking about dealing with issues that we've been dealing with at 6 o'clock.
Mr. Sullivan would be hired
I
as
think I'm following your logic there.
as the permanent town administrator with a 1-year contract.
Well... No, Mr.
I'm done.
Ellen? Anything?
That was one of my major issues. If, and I kind of would ask this board this, but it's probably more to Mr. Sullivan. If, I don't know that we have the authority to not fund the financial analyst. I think that this board, I don't know, but it's day to day. That's my thoughts. However, if we strongly encouraged that not be filled and or funded in moving forward, I mean, could we just make that as a strong suggestion? Only because, again,
the person you're talking to is sitting there listening.
I know. But my this is, you know,
I think that does go to...
it does go to day, but this would certainly have someone in there that's familiar with the job, and this board has some confidence in with someone with experience to, I think that Mrs. Winslow's suggestion is a good one.
What is the consultant piece?
The consultant piece, from what I'm understanding from what Mrs. Winslow is saying, is that it could be, you know, they have those interim town administrators, that's what they do. And if we could have someone come in on a part-time basis with an amount certain, that could assist for time certain as well.
That's it.
But
That would be at the town administrator's discretion, right?
I believe so, but this would also, if we're saying that the line item for the town administrator is, as Mr. Sullivan said, 109,000 in change, and we're certainly not going to discuss his salary in this forum. However, I think that all of the monies would be kind of divided between. That's what I'm getting.
But you're not saying that the Board of Selectmen are going to control some consulting engagement.
No.
No.
Would be up to the person who's the town administrator. If he or she needed help, they would bring someone in. Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
Do you want me to explain?
Well, I just want to make sure that
Yes.
I'm
It would.
following your logic, but I don't think the five of us should be telling somebody when to have a consultant come or not.
No, what we're doing, Mr. Chairman, is we are understanding that Mr. Sullivan, in order for us to put Mr. Sullivan in a position where he can succeed,
I understand that.
We-
I'm just saying.
right?
All I'm saying is it's not the decision of.
No, that would be completely up to him. However, it would, in my opinion, be in the best interest of not only the town, but Mr. Sullivan, should he want to continue on, to recognize that everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and to seek the help of a consultant to help him through those tough times.
But that's up to him.
That has to be up to him.
Mr. Titlebaum.
Well, this is interesting. I'll be honest, since the time Mr. Sullivan has taken over, I've frankly been nothing but impressed with the job he's done. And if it takes acceding to a consultant to give him the job, I'm okay with that. I would say that from my own point of view, people have brought up the notion of experience to me, but when my rejoinder is, well, tell me what he's managed to not handle properly due to a lack of experience, most of the time I get a blank stare. But I am mindful that this is a concern that some people have, and I'm mindful that we need, frankly, the votes to get this done. And so I'm more than willing to go along with this proposal. I would say, as far as the consultant goes, we can structure a contract with Mr. Sullivan to include the consultant, and by that way not control Mr. Sullivan's interaction with the consultant on a day-to-day basis, but by doing so, set it up so that the consultant is part of the process and available for him to use as he needs. Because I don't want, the last thing I want this board to be doing is to be running to a consultant to say, how's he doing, how's he doing, how's he doing. I don't want to see anything like that. I want this to be a tool for Mr. Sullivan to do his job, and perhaps to be mentored a little bit to the extent that he may need it. It's not a means for us to control the position, so I just want to be clear on that. But otherwise, that having been said, I think this is a very reasonable compromise solution that's been arrived at here from Selectman Winslow, and I thank her for it.
I'm going to start getting a clock for lawyers.
Like that.
Mr. Slavin.
We've been running around, not having a TA, which is really causing a problem because we're sitting there putting out fires, we're doing stuff instead of getting on with the business we have at hand. The solution is a reasonable solution. It's a little bit of a political solution as well. That's all fine, but I have one issue which is real simple. It's called procurement, and it's also called 30B, and it's also, when you have a town administrator, I believe we have to basically go out for either an RFP or something, because you're not hiring an interim right now. You're physically hiring a town administrator, and I'm questioning whether or not you can just go ahead and take someone who's the interim and do that. Also, Mr. Sullivan would have to put out either a bid for 3 people who are recognized by the state or whatever in order to hire a consultant, but it is a process for all of us. I'm not 100% sure that we as a board can sit here and just hire someone without other people bidding, because we're offering a job. He's the interim. He's the interim town administrator. You're going to hire a town administrator. That's the final position, and I don't think you can do that just by doing it here right now.
I would say to that, if the board so choose this plan, that at that point we turn it over to legal counsel,
Exactly.
just as we did before when we had a question of screening committees, right? Back to, if the board wants to move in that direction, then we go back to Rich and say, okay, here's what we'd like to do. You tell us legally how we get from A to B.
With no problems that way.
Mr. Chairman.
But I don't want legal counsel spending all kinds of time on something if it's not the wish of the board, right?
Right. But just can I speak to that? It's not common for a Board of Selectmen to hire an interim into the position. There is no requirement for posting the job. Plymouth recently did it about 9 months ago when they hired their interim without posting. That's a charter. Our charter gives us the ability to hire. Once we negotiate this contract with him and we determine a dollar amount for the consultant, that will determine whether or not he has to go out for quotes or bid as far as the procurement process goes. But since we don't have a dollar amount on that, will be part of what we discuss with the salary. We don't know, but there is a procurement process to that, and he will, as the town administrator, be expected to follow that appropriately with the assistance of counsel if necessary.
I have no problem with the process. I'd just like to just wait a week if we can to make sure town council we've got everything set properly. I don't want to go forward and then find out we've done something wrong.
I don't.
I understand what you're saying with Plymouth, but I just want to make sure.
I don't.
Everybody's charter is slightly different.
I don't have an issue with that, but I did look at the charter, and there is no. There doesn't seem to be any requirement that we actually post.
I would just say if you make a motion, and then I'll follow that motion with town council. And if he says there's an issue, we can come back and change it.
My motion would be that this board agree, with the approval of town council, to enter into contract negotiations with Mr. Derek Sullivan for a contract for a period of no more than 1 year for the position of town administrator.
Second.
I have a motion made in second. Anything on the question?
This does require a supermajority, by the way.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Oh, abstain. Unanimous. 5-0-0.
Now the next question would be if Mr. Sullivan desires to enter into negotiations with
But
us.
I don't think he can answer that question legally right now. We will.
But he is going to have to let us know.
I will get with Rich, and then whatever happens from this point forward, we'll do it under advice of council.
Item number C. This is my last one. I'm trying really hard to. The funding source for contract 2. I did a little research on this, and this is something that we're going to have to, and I don't think we're going to get to it tonight. I'm actually really sick, and my fever's coming back.
Now, these were well, I can probably almost get rid of B, but these were recurring
Correct.
requests.
Correct. This is another one that we're probably going to need some advice and guidance from town council as far as whether or not we are going to need to come up with the entire funding in order to set the betterment, or if we just need to figure out the lack of funding for each contract year. From what I read, there was some conflicting information, but we also need the betterment number, and we need to decide.
I got a request on that from Mr. Campino today, I think it was. That they were ready, and just, the request to put it on the agenda to set the I'm sorry. I did get an email. I think it was today. My email's been a little kaplooey, but it was either today or yesterday from Guy to put that on the agenda, to set the betterment. So it sounded like they had all the numbers, but then he said he'd be ready for the 27th, so I'm not sure. Well, we don't meet next week, maybe that's
Right.
what it meant.
So
I would think that the setting would probably take place on the 27th or the, what's that first one, the 4th, 3rd? Be one of those 2 weeks where we'd be able to have it on the agenda.
So just to wrap up, items A and C, I would like recurring, and item B will depend on town council's advice
Right.
and how we move forward with that.
A and C are recurring.
Correct.
And if there's nothing up, we just move on.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you. Item D, I believe, is Mr. Titlebaum or Mr. Slavens, the discussion regarding Beaches and Parks Committee.
Mr. Titlebaum.
Yes, just to revisit briefly, this was discussed a few weeks back at one of our abbreviated sessions before town meeting. But anyway, I'm proposing to establish a Beach and Tourism Commission. I would like the Board of Selectmen to establish this as our chairman calls them, task force or selectman appointed board, whatever the terminology is initially. We have 54 miles of coastline in this town. We have, I don't know how many miles of riverways. We could be the kayak capital of the world if we wanted to be. We could promote our beaches. We could work with large landowners to get access to areas where people could kayak or canoe. I've already spoken with Mike Oakland of AD Makepeace, and he's amenable to opening up lands and making them available for people to go explore. What we don't have in this town is any means of advertising ourselves. There's no such thing as visitwareham.com. We don't have any kind of a tourism agent. And I'm not suggesting that we go out and hire a tourism agent right away. What I'm suggesting is that we form a commission to study what we need to do to get ourselves on the map and to start making use of our natural assets, to start earning some coin out of our beaches, where I hear from some of our senior work-off people who guard and collect at the parking lots that when people show up as day trippers at some of them, they have to turn them away, and there's really no provision to collect money from them. This isn't something we should have to be worrying about in 2012. You go over the bridge, you go to a beach, you either have a resident sticker that gets you in the parking lot or you pay 10 or 15 bucks. And it's time for us to start doing some of those things as well. What I'm looking for in terms of the makeup of the committee would be a member of the Board of Selectmen and also 4 at-large members. I had originally thought about what kind of town department heads would you want on this. And by the time I went down the list, you would have had a committee of about 35 people. It would have been completely unwieldy and unworkable. A committee, by definition, can invite the department heads to come talk to them. They can get the information they need from the department heads. So the committee doesn't have to be the department heads. So what I'm looking for is 4 at-large individuals, preferred backgrounds in land use and business development, marketing, and the tourist and hospitality industries. There would be an appointing of authority that would be, for the selectman member, it would be this body. And for the 4 at-large members, it would be the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator or interim town administrator, and the town moderator. And I'm looking for the selectman member to have a fractional term until April 30th of next year with 1-year terms after that. And then the 4 at-large members to each have 2 years from the date of appointment. So that's my proposal.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Winslow.
I just have one comment to make. If this is an advisory board to the Board of Selectmen, then the Board of Selectmen should appoint the board.
Well, what do the other members think? I'm not, you know, hard and fast on what I've come up with here, so.
It would make it easier if the Board of Selectmen were the appointing authority. It would create problems, I think, the other way.
Okay.
I have 2 questions and a comment.
Mrs. Bagley.
Might be one question. One of my questions is, well, I'm sorry. The 2, you said that the 4 at large would be, their terms would end all at the same time? Because you
Well,
had them starting, yeah, you did.
Yeah, they would. I could stagger that as well. We could start off with, 2 1 years and then 2 years and then thereafter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, whatever. Now, my comment is this. I think it's a great idea. This is my concern. How many vacancies on existing committees do we already have? And that's a legitimate concern.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
We've got a ton.
It's actually,
You don't know.
It's actually, I had a number. It's actually getting smaller.
But it's significant. I mean,
Well, I
we've
don't think it's significant,
but we've
it's
had
getting smaller.
but we've had committees that are unable to meet because they don't have a quorum. That's my concern.
No, I'm mindful of that. What I think is going to be different about this is the qualifications of the kind of people that I'm looking for. It's going to be in their self-interest to get in here and grow the tourism industries. I mean, if you own a restaurant, if you own a bed and breakfast, if you cater to the hospitality trade, if you have a boat marina, if you have any of these things, you should want to be interested in this if you're a good business person. So I think that in and of itself is going to generate interest.
But my recommendation certainly is if this board chooses to go forward with this, I do agree with Mrs. Winslow that the Board of Selectmen would be the appointing authority, and I would strongly suggest that you stagger, because we've come up against that in the past with various committees that we didn't do that, and it ended up being an issue.
My question is, I heard the word advisory board. I heard it from, I think, Kara said it. I didn't hear you say that. Did you say that? Is this a regular board or committee for the town?
It would be. It would not have its own purview. It would not have the ability to adopt any regulations.
Lawyers, let me finish, please. Because if it's another advisory board, I'm not too thrilled on that. I mean, we have a list that we're trying to determine what to do with now. If it's a committee, it's going to go out and work.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the committee, because I wrote down committee, not advisory board. There's a big difference.
Well, I'm describing it as a commission, because I think eventually I'd like to see it grow into something like that with a budget, with a tourism agent, and all the things that you really need to do.
You
got to start it somewhere.
You're
This
trying
is
to
a getting
form
start.
a committee,
Yes,
right?
a commission, I'll call it. But yeah,
You can't have a committee?
It can only be an advisory board to the Board of Selectmen unless it's created by town meeting. So you can set it up originally as an advisory board, start it as an advisory board to the
Bring it
Board of
in April,
Selectmen,
see how it goes?
and then
well, one of the things I was thinking
Go
is,
along with that.
you know, we're in many ways the custodians of town property. We determine access, we determine availability. To some extent, I think we probably have the authority, for example, to determine parking fees on town land. There are some things we can get into here in terms of generating money. I'm not saying
stop while you're ahead, please.
Yeah.
Because you're talking yourself into a no vote, so I would stop right where you are.
Please.
So, advisory board
if
and appoint by the Board of Selectmen, I agree with that.
As of now, what I would suggest also is, since there be 4 people, we stagger, because we always appoint people for
And
3
stagger.
years, so one person will be appointed for 3 years, 2 for 2 years, 1 for 3 years, and then we'll
There's-
stagger through.
there's no reason why the board can't advise the Board of Selectmen that it should do certain things with its land, or that it should go to town meeting with an article to create a commit. There's nothing stopping them from that. But as far as our charter goes, we are only authorized to create a board to advise us.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I move to, what was it that you wanted to do, Peter? Go, you do it.
I'll make it. I move that the Board of Selectmen establish a beach and tourism commission. The purpose, you want to call it a committee? People really
Advisory
like that word,
board
don't they? Beach and Tourism Advisory Board, how's that?
to the Board of Selectmen.
Advisory Board to the Board of Selectmen. The purpose of said commission to study how best to promote Wareham as a tourist destination and report same to the Board of Selectmen. The makeup of said commission to be as follows. 1 member of the Board of Selectmen appointed to a fractional term until April 30th, 2013, with 1-year terms thereafter. 4 members at large, 2 to be appointed to 3-year terms, and 2 to be appointed to 2-year terms. No?
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. You got 4 members. How are you going to do that?
1 year term, 2 year term, 3 year term.
1, 2, 2, 3.
1, 2, 1.
You read it in.
Members to be appointed, 1 member will be appointed for 1 year, 2 members for 2 years, 1 member for 3 years, and then they'll rotate after that.
Okay, I have a motion.
That's it. Yes.
I have a motion made and seconded. Anything else on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? 500. Mr. Sullivan, would you make sure we get that out, some kind of a broadcast? I would entertain a motion by the board to appoint a member to the new advisory board.
Okay, nobody's gonna have any other town business not
Hang on
reasonably.
a second.
What?
I'm entertaining a motion to appoint somebody to this group.
Oh, right now.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Tyler Baum.
There we go.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for Mr. Titlebaum to be appointed to his newly created committee. Anything on the question?
I'd like to do it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 500.
Okay,
That doesn't have to come back.
no. Item E, any other town business not reasonably anticipated? Nobody's got anything, right? Okay. And Mr. Sullivan is gonna give us the quick overview of his town administrator report.
Yes, and sure, the first thing's probably a little understated. I just want to say a simple thank you to the board. So we'll move on from there. Earlier in the year, I'd informed us that this fiscal year the police had received a $17,000 911 grant. They've now received an additional $58,000 to that grant. So we're totaling at $75,000 on that. So that's really a great thing for that, for training and such. So we're very happy about that and looking forward to our departments to do a few more of those, hopefully. The next thing is something that is going to be hopefully quick, but we've been speaking about how to generate recurring revenue. And as part of when I'd given the department heads the budget message for FY14 was to review their fees and see if, one, are they in line with other communities, and two, are they covering the costs of what we actually do? The Treasurer Collector's Office brought forth that the MLC fees, which are the municipal lien certificate fees, the easiest way to think about it is during a real estate transaction, usually the attorney will call the Treasurer Collector's Office or send forth a notice figuring out what's owed on there. Is it taxes or sewer? And that's the actual document given by the Treasurer Collector's Office. It's called the municipal lien certificate. What I've handed out shows that 4 out of the 27 communities that we've looked at are charging $50 or above $25. We're still currently at the $25 rate. Over the last few years, we've earned about $26,000, $27,000 and change in 2010. For FY12, it looks like it's $25,500. What I'm proposing is that we bring it up to the $50 mark with all the surrounding communities and give us roughly an additional $25,000 of recurring revenue every year. And it's the cost of doing business of closing a loan or purchasing a property. What I would ask is if the board were going to vote on it, we would start it on January 1st so that we could allow the realtors and the attorneys some notification time. I don't know if you'd need a public hearing, but it's absolutely something that we can do on there. Like I said, we've put this out almost 6 to 8 weeks, so if we want to put this on
Do we have to vote on this? This would seem like
there's sort of.
Huh?
Mr. Chair, I know from attending Board of Health meetings that they've increased their fees and without a public hearing.
Yeah.
And they've increased as a department, they've increased their fees with just a vote of the Board of Health. So I don't know, you can certainly ask Attorney Bowen.
Mr. Buckminster's, don't we? The Board of Health is
We did vote without a public hearing, but with Mr. Buckminster's, that's right.
But we do approve his fee hikes. We wouldn't approve the Board of Health.
Board of Health has its own state legislation.
That's
Right.
they're an independent.
Mr. Chairman, oh, I'm sorry. I don't have an issue voting on this and I don't believe that we require a public hearing, but I do think this should go on an agenda with due notice to
Yeah.
the public.
Is that fine?
Yeah,
Work for you? Put it on the next agenda?
27th.
Yeah, perfectly fine. Great.
Big agenda.
No, it's all clear.
Good idea, though. It'll double that money.
Absolutely. On there. So,
Okay.
and we,
Anything else?
Under your report, I guess I'll wait until the liaison.
no, thank you.
That was it?
Nice and short and
Did,
sweet.
well, I have a question then.
Okay.
Was it today or tomorrow?
They are, Powers and Sullivan is actively working inside our building today. So if you go past room 23, you'll see
I
the
saw
auditors.
the lights
in it.
blazing.
Oh yeah, you could probably, they might even still be there right now for all, they work some long hours. They had started on Monday from their own building with some of the information that we've given them, and today they're hooked into all our departments and they're working away there.
Have you had, well, I'm not going to say have you had communication with the DOR because I know the answer to that, but have you given them an approximate date that would be able to comply with their requirements?
No, I'm going to wait for the auditors to sort of give us more of an update on there. The best, I've always felt it's better to, to give a true statement rather than overpromise and underdeliver.
No, I understand that.
In our situation, that's a good idea.
But you're in close communication with their office so that they're not
I called
unaware.
I called the DOR today. We didn't get connected, but I'm expecting a phone call tomorrow. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up from last week, you did get that report out to Mrs. Bronk and the Finance Committee?
Yes, they have that and should be able to discuss it at their next meeting, which I'm planning on attending as well.
Yeah, what is the,
Yeah.
no, it's the date, what's the 28th? The 28th, I think, is Wednesday.
28th would be, you have Tuesday's 27th. Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have a meeting on the 28th?
They're going to meet on the 28th, my understanding.
That's what I think.
They're not meeting this week.
Are the board members, are we, anybody not available on the 28th? It's a Wednesday. I was going to call Mrs. Bronk, and knowing that Mr. Sullivan will be there, I was going to ask her because it is a finance night, that we could have a joint meeting of the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and Mr. Sullivan, in detail to walk through this process and where we're at together. If nobody has any issues with that, I'll call Mrs. Bronk and let you know.
I'm not going to be able to be there, but don't hold back on my account.
All right, that's the question I had. So that could be on the liaison reports, I guess.
Liaison reports. Well, who do you want to start with? Mrs. Begley?
Whoever would like to go first.
I just want to let everyone know that the Board of Health isn't meeting for the rest of the month. They won't meet till December 5th. They did have a public hearing. I think they were calling it water quality regulations. And there was a great deal of exchange of really good information from audience participants and the board, and they're taking it under advisement. The Transportation Action Committee met, and there was an RFP that Mr. Sullivan and Dr. Rabinovich had worked on, and I believe that was going to council, and that was going out with, the RFP had 4 scenarios, and so we can get true cost to really make comparisons as to what the cost would be to outsource and what the cost would be to keep it in-house. And I have a question for, because I received the minutes, for Mr. Tylerbaum, are you the liaison for Cable Advisory?
Yes, I am.
Are they, since there is Cable Advisory Committee, are they authorized to go into actual negotiations for the contract? Is that what's happening? Because that's the flavor I got from the minutes.
Yeah, ultimately, what the general laws provide is that there's a cable advisory committee that does Eventually, after seeking input from the public and seeking input for the local community television and the various different players, they then notify the cable providers that they're ready to begin a contract negotiation. Now, this is a lengthy process. It takes years. But that is the task of that committee.
Well, my other question is a follow-up question. So they're going to go into negotiations. I saw in their minutes that they were discussing hiring counsel. They don't have a budget for this.
No, there is no budget for this, and this is something that's, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I've got to take a look at that and see, and get them sort of under our umbrella with regard to that, because there is no budget for that.
There is no other umbrella. No one in
Exactly.
this town, no committee has the authority
Exactly.
to bring
That's
in
what I mean,
in
this
counsel
umbrella.
without that
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Well, they
That's
were
it.
discussing in the minutes, Mr. Chair, about interviewing counsel. So also, I'd like to have the Cable Advisory Committee be at least on the agenda on a monthly basis so that this board knows every single step of the negotiations, because ultimately it is not that committee that approves that contract.
Right.
It just says that they
You'd be cautious with
asked
that.
whether there was a retaining of counsel, and Paul said that this would be recommended to the Board of Selectmen.
This is the most recent?
November 7th.
Okay.
This most recent meeting.
Well, I was a little concerned. So just as long as they know that they...
I won't let them go off the reservation on that
Okay,
one.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And this all takes place, the Board of Selectmen are the ones who ultimately,
Negotiate and sign the
Contract.
contract. Exactly.
Some future Board of Selectmen, at the rate these things go. They're glacial.
all right.
I have nothing.
The audit committee will not meet right now with Powers and Sullivan due to the nature of the time frame we have to get our tax rate set. We'll be meeting with them when they actually put together the management report letter. And that's all I have for today.
And I would say that probably by Friday, we would have a draft ready for you all to review for the contract between the town and WCTV. Rich was going to have it, trying to get it ready for Friday, so I'm assuming that it's done. There's two issues. You have this committee that's dealing with the town and Verizon.
I understand. And then us with
That's
WCTV.
correct. And you all asked me and Alan to work with Rich to get that done, to bring back here, so that we can sit and discuss it.
Mr. Chair, will that come to us with enough time for us to thoroughly review it
Oh, yeah.
prior
Oh,
to
trust me, there's plenty of time.
it being on an agenda?
It'll be on an agenda, based on what Rich tells me, whether it's an exec meeting or an open meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I'm just giving you an update because I haven't seen it as of Friday, but I know he was busy tonight. So I'm hoping to have it this week, and we'll get that at least sent out to you so you can start reading it.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
and thank you.
Thanksgiving.